Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. It's the Monday after the Sunday of NFL Week 16, and we are going to do right now our regular What We Learned from the Sunday results call with professional sports bettor Ted Savransky, a.k.a. Teddy Covers. Teddy, we've only got obviously one more week in the regular season, and then we have the playoffs to look ahead to. The first thing that pops out at us when we look at what happened on Sunday, a lot of big favorites going down, right? The Seahawks, the Panthers, and the Steelers all big favorites that lost outright, and then KC won, but they lost ATS. They also lost the 6 and 7 point teasers. I don't know. Do we take anything from that? Are we down on the Panthers or the Seahawks maybe going forward? What do you think?
Well, certainly when it comes to the sports books, the sportsbook director is a lot happier today
right.
than they were last Monday at this time after a carnage weekend in the NFL for the books and a great weekend for the bettors. This week, obviously, the situation were reversed. You talked about a number of the big favorites that not only failed to cover, but failed to win the game straight up, which means money lines lose, which means teasers lose, and that means that the books had themselves a pretty strong day yesterday, at least the books that cater to public bettors. But you asked me about two teams in particular. Carolina, I'm not worried at all about the Panthers. I watched the game pretty closely against Atlanta. Atlanta played really well. B, Carolina was a little bit flat, a little bit tired. And, teams in the history of the NFL, there's a reason that only two teams have ever gone undefeated in the regular season. The 72 Dolphins and, of course, the Patriots team with Brady and Moss. It's happened twice in 50 years. Because it does, teams run out of gas. They can't bring their A game every week. Carolina didn't play well yesterday. I don't think it has any effect on them moving forward. But Seattle's loss, to me, is probably the more meaningful of the two. The Seahawks had a lot to play for, and they came up flat at home against a Rams team that I'm not particularly enamored with. And it showed the same weaknesses that have been pervasive for the Seahawks all year. Their offensive line can't block against good defensive lines. And their defense, particularly their secondary, is more vulnerable than it's been in any recent season. So I'm more concerned about the Seahawks moving forward than I am about the Panthers.
Really? Even though before last week, the Seahawks were looking absolutely awesome on offense. Russell Wilson just looking like playing out of his skull at quarterback. So going forward, do you think that, the Seahawks will revert back to the awesome form that they showed before last week? Or will we see more of what we saw last week? And, thinking about the playoffs, do you expect them to be maybe overvalued or undervalued? Which do you think is a little bit more likely? Pure speculation right now, Teddy Covers, but just getting your thoughts on it.
Sure. I had a conversation with Jay Cornegay, who runs the Westgate Superbook here in Las Vegas last week. And he made it very clear in no uncertain terms. Seattle was, prior to week 16, Seattle was the single highest priority team in the NFL. They'd have been favored over anyone on a neutral field moving forward. I didn't buy that then. I don't buy it now. I think there are a number of teams that are better than the Seahawks. And again, you talk about the history of the NFL. The history of the NFL, teams have gone to 3 straight Super Bowls, a grand total of twice. The Dolphins did it in the early 70s, and that's a very different era. The Bills did it in the early 90s. It took the greatest comeback in NFL history for them to get there, and that was a very different era. The Seahawks, that offense, I do believe Russell Wilson in the passing game will have some success in the postseason, but I don't think Seattle is anywhere near as good as they were last year or the year before, while the rest of the NFC, or at least a good handful of teams, may well have caught up with them.
All right, interesting thoughts, Teddy Covers. We'll see what the Seahawks playoff lines wind up being. Then two other teams that got nice wins. Wondering what you think about them. Both are headed to the playoffs, right? The Redskins and Arizona. The Redskins 3 straight covers and clinched the NFC East with a nice win over Philly. And then Arizona blew out Green Bay. Now, Green Bay obviously not as powerful of a team as they have been in recent years. But still, Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, a decent team, and Arizona absolutely blew them out, looking very, very deep. Do you expect either Arizona or the Redskins, or maybe both, to be good bets going forward into the playoffs?
I'm a big Arizona fan. I'm an Arizona believer. I think this team, they made me money all year. They made me money last year when no one believed in them, and they were 9-1 before Palmer got hurt. I'm a Bruce Arians fan. The defensive injuries concern me. The loss of Tyrann Mathieu matters. Matters a lot. They were without both starting safeties in the win against Green Bay. Of course, didn't matter. They kicked the tar out of the Packers in that ballgame, and that's what Arizona's capable of doing. I'm a Cardinal believer, and I continue to think they are an undervalued commodity because they haven't been in these games on a consistent basis in recent seasons. Certainly not in January. Arizona, for me, is bet on all the way. What was the other team that you asked me about?
Well, the Redskins, big game against
the
Philly. They
Redskins.
clinched the NFC East with a nice win, and that makes 3 straight covers now for the Redskins.
Yeah, and that being said, they're likely to be home dogs in their playoff game, especially if it's if it's Green Bay or Seattle who they face in round 1. They will be home dogs in that game. If they face Minnesota at home, they might be short chalk, but I give the Redskins credit. But to win the weakest division I guess you can make a case that the AFC South is weaker. To win one of the 2 weakest divisions in football and get to 8 wins does not say to me the Redskins are bet on moving forward. I don't know that Washington's necessarily bet against. I just think that they are, from a powering perspective, I got the Redskins at least, I think, 1.5 lower than any other team that's in the playoff mix right now. So while and I believe the markets do too. So I don't look at Washington as a team that anyone's going to fall in love with, and there may end up being value on the Redskins in the wild card round because they are a team that nobody respects. We'll have to see what the matchup is. But again, if they're home to Seattle, they're home to Green Bay, likely to be home dogs, and playoff home dogs. Mixed bag over the years, not particularly good in recent seasons.
Okay, so what else can we take, Teddy Covers, you think, from the on-field results from NFL Week 16? All we have left is quirky Week 17 and then the playoffs. But there can be oftentimes sneaky and sometimes big betting value with the lines for Week 17 and then, of course, in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Week 17 is a minefield. And if I find 3 good bets this week, I'll be thrilled. Literally thrilled. We see that on Monday morning, normally you have almost every game lined. Here we are talking on Monday afternoon, and half the games still don't have lines on them yet as the books wait to see with the injuries and all that. But I think there's one team we got to talk about from the AFC, and that's the New England Patriots, who lost again yesterday. And there were some things in that game that stood out to me really, really strongly, like the Patriots trailing before halftime. They get the ball back. They got 1:50 left from their own 20-yard line. Belichick runs out the clock. Brady's not firing away downfield. They run out the clock before halftime with time and timeouts. What does that tell us? It tells us that Bill Belichick doesn't trust his offensive line right now, and I don't blame him.
Well, there's also some speculation that they kind of threw the game to screw the Steelers.
There's always speculation with Belichick. I don't buy it. I think it's total BS. Again, every media guy in the world needs an article to write on Sunday night and Monday morning. They all got to have content. They all got to get copy. Oh, this sounds interesting. Let's do this. Yeah, right. You really think that New England is better served having to win at Miami next week as opposed to resting players? There's no way New England lay down in that game. And if they did, why did they come back to tie it?
Right.
I'm
just telling you what I read Monday morning.
Yeah, exactly, guys. Again, everyone's got to file stories.
Right.
Everyone's looking for clickbait. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. There's no way the Patriots were trying to lose so they could get the Jets have given this team fits, literally. And I'm not talking about Fitzpatrick. I'm talking about every recent meeting between those two teams has been decided by a TD or less for the last 3 years. Every meeting like that. It's not like New England's an easier opponent or the Jets are an easier opponent than the Steelers are necessarily. I'm not buying that one iota. But the point is, what happened was New England started the game without both their starting guards. As the game progressed, they lost both their starting tackles. This team has no offensive line. Tom Brady doesn't have any time to throw downfield. And the Patriots right now, I know they've been the best team in the league. I think they're paper tigers. I do not look at New England as an elite Super Bowl contender. I look at the Patriots right now, this banged-up Patriots team, as being pretty much what one might call a fraud.
Really? Okay, and then maybe we look to unders as well with the Pats if you think that they don't trust
their defense. Their defense is riddled. Their secondary's got nobody left. Their linebacking core doesn't have a healthy body. The Patriots, again, they have this reputation. They have a 13-2 record. They've made money for their supporters. Right now, they are an injury-riddled mess.
Okay, Teddy Covers, tell us how you really feel about the Pats next time. All right, Teddy Covers, Always interesting to hear your thoughts in the What We Learned segment every week, and we will be back next week once again for What We Learned from Week 17. Thanks so much, Teddy.